Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this dress. So basically the lines I have here, I just have half an inch at the top. You have to draft this on a pattern, guys. You can't go directly on your fabric. So first thing I did is just to rule a line half an inch at the top, and then from there I measured from my shoulder to my nipple, which is at 11.5, my shoulder to my under bust at 15.5, and then my shoulder to my waist at 17.5. Once that is done, the next thing I did is to measure half of my shoulder measurement. So guys, the shoulder divided by 2 that I have here, which is half of my shoulder measurement, is 8. After that, you come down 1 inch of shoulder slope, and then inside here you're going to insert your chest line, which is basically your armhole divided by 2. But how you're going to calculate it is you can do your bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5. So round your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5, whatever you get, you mark it here. So I'm going to just rule a straight line across for my somewhere here. So guys, after that, the next thing I'm going to do now, you see I've connected my line. So the next thing I'm going to do, especially for the front, is just to mark from here to here, find halfway through. So halfway for me is going to be 4.5. So I'm going to mark that. So 4 because I have 9 as the straight line, so 4.5 will be half of it. And then on that line I'm going to come in by half an inch, and then I'm going to give it a curve. So but before that, I'm going to just put in my bust measurement divided by 4. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that. So what I'm going to do now is to connect from here to this point and then to this point. So guys, once that is done, I came in here 3 inches for the neckline, and then I marked half an inch, and then I'm going to connect it to this 1 inch of shoulder slope. And then I'm also going to mark half an inch for the shoulder seam, because guys, you have to have your seam allowance here. Because if you don't have your seam allowance at the top, you won't you're going to, if you take away the seam allowance from the cloth itself, it's going to pull it and it will alter your under bust measurements, and then it will not, this under bust will not be, because you have to wear the perfect bra and measure this, so you know that this is exactly where your under bust is, because you don't want that line above to come up more. So that's it. So after that, I'm going to put in my tape here and measure my nipple to nipple divided by 2. So that's going to be at 4. I'm going to also mark that same line here, and then mark it also on this line. And then 1 inch below this, 1 inch, this is my under bust, this is my bust line, right? My shoulder to my nipple line. I'm going to step down 1 inch from there, and then I'm going to connect my dart. So guys, once I did that, the next thing I did is to mark half an inch on this side, half an inch on that side, and then I connected it all to this point, 1 inch before my nipple. This is for my dart. So guys, once that is done, the next thing I'm going to do now is to mark from this. Depends on you how deep you want your V to be. So let's say I decide to use 1 inch below my nipple line. So it depends on you where you want yours to be. So that will be somewhere here. I'm going to now connect from that point to the 3 inches of neckline. Guys, if you want, you can use directly to this nipple line. Or if you want, you can use directly to this line, but I'm going to do 1 inch below that line, because as you can see on her own, she's the neckline came down a little bit. So if you want, you can use on this line on exactly, or you can do 1 inch below that line or half an inch below that line. So all I have to do now is I'm just going to connect it from this point of the neckline straight to that point that I want to work with, and then from there I'm going to connect from this point here to this point using my curve ruler. So you're going to this side of my dart, the outer part of my dart, I'm going to connect it to this point exactly. So I'm going to also blend this in this way and connect it here. You see? And then after that, the next thing I'm going to do is so go to this bust line. Like we already measured before, my bust measurement divided by 4 is here, 10.5. I'm going to add at least 1.5 inch of sewing or 1 inch of sewing, depending on you. I'm going to come down to my waist and do the same thing. Waist measurement divided by 4. I'm going to mark that. Take whatever I have here for the dart, add it back. If it's 1 inch you use, add it back. And then once you add it back, you also add in your 1 inch for your seam allowance or 1.5 for the sewing allowance. Once you do that, you're going to connect from this point here to this here. So let me just mark it so you guys will see where my seam allowances are. So now that I've marked it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up on this line by at least half an inch on this line. So I'm going to go up half an inch on this my under bust line, and then I'm going to blend it into this part here. So I'm going to take it and blend it into the outer part of my dart, the other leg of the dart, the outer one. I'm going to connect it that way. If you want, you can still maintain this straight line. It depends on you. If you want, you can still take it up this way, but I'm going to take it up this way so it will fit better. So take it up at least by 1/2 inch and then blend it into the line. So that's basically it for me. You see, so that's basically it for this here. So all I have to do now is to go ahead and cut it out. So guys, now that we've done this, that's it for the front panel. So guys, I know you'll be wondering, I didn't have any seam allowance for the bottom part here, because this one here is what I'm going to use to cut the rest of the dress. You understand? It's going to be a one piece going down from here now. So I'm going to use this to cut the whole bottom of my dress. I'm not adding anything to it. So that's why, because normally I would have added 1/2 inch to it to join maybe a skirt or a pant or anything for my seam allowance here, but there will not be any of that, because using this pattern now, I'm going to trace the whole length of that flay dress you're seeing, be it if I want it up to my ankle or if I want it up to my, like, below the knee or anywhere. So with that said, now the next thing we have to do is on the shoulder of this line. Now you're going to find halfway through. So halfway through for me will be somewhere here on this line, and then I'm going to connect it from all the way here to that point. So guys, you're going to find a way to connect from that point to here, just like this, the center leg of my dart all the way to this top part. So I'm just going to use it this way, and then I'm going to split it into two. I'm going to just take it this way and split it open. So with this now, when I go to trace my pattern, I'm going to have, when I go to trace this out now, I'm going to just open it up and make sure I have about 1.5 in between here, 1.5 or at least 2 inches in between this parts here. So that's what I'm going to do. But in the meantime, let's set this aside and draft our back pattern. So guys, this is the back panel. We are going to use a basic back bodice for this. So you see, I've drafted it. So basically all I did here, I made sure to also have that same 1 inch of shoulder slope, and then I also used my shoulder to my, so from this straight line here is basically my shoulder to my waist. There's no seam allowance again on this one too. So that's all I have. So the next thing I'm going to do now is, you see my basic back bodice. This is where my dart would have been. This is my 1 inch of back neckline, my shoulder slope, my basic armhole, my bust measurement divided by 4 plus extra 1.5, or the same allowance you use in front is basically what you're using at the back. And then you see I have a zipper allowance here, right? Mind you, we'll be cutting out most of this. So now I'm going to do after that is just to go ahead from this top part now. It depends on you how many inches after the 1 inch of your neckline that you're going to be cutting out. It depends on you how many inches you want to come down with. So let's say I decide to do 3 inches so that you can use lining for this, so that you can use 1/2 inch to join the lining at the top and 1/2 inch to join the lining at the bottom. That means you'll be left with at least 2 inches in between here. It depends on you what you want to do, and if you're going to be using a button or like an iron hook or a pressing button, anyone you're using. So let's say I decide to do 3.5 because I want a little bit of coverage at the back. So I'm going to do 3.5. You can do 4, you can do 3 inches on the dot. It depends on you. So I brought down mine a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect from that point now to where my side is. So you see I have my seam allowance already. So I'm going to stop at the very end of where my seam allowance is. The angle at this point is where I'm going to stop. So I'm going to connect from this point here to that point, just like this. So I'm going to connect it that way. You see my dart didn't come in here, right? Even if my dart came in, I can still just go ahead and curve it a little bit more if I feel like the opening is not much. So this is actually what I'm working with now. So what I have to do is just to go ahead and cut. So guys, like I said, if you feel like this is too much, like it's coming out a lot, what you can do is, instead of using a ruler, you can still go back in like this now and give it a lot more curve. So you can still go back in now and cut off this excess more, so that way you can open it up more. Guys, I don't want it to open. I'm just okay with the way it is now, so I'm going to stick with this. So now the next thing we are going to do is just to take this pattern now, and then we'll start to trace the bottom. So guys, this is it here. So you see, this is my pattern, the bottom part. So what I did is just to fold away my dart. So you have to make sure the two lines, the outer line of the dart and the other inner one, they meet each other, and then you fold it away. You can use your tape or you can use pin to fold it out away. That way you don't have to, so you don't have to trace the dart again on the clothes. And then you remember, from the bottom part of this dress we didn't add any seam allowance of this pattern. So what you're going to measure is from the end of this pattern now. So that means on your body you will measure from your waist directly to all the way to your ankle, or wherever you want the length to be. The only seam allowance you're adding is just the 1 inch to fold the edge of the cloth. You will not be adding any seam allowance to this part, to under this part here. So basically I measured from my waist to my ankle, and what I had is 41. So that means I'm going to make sure that from the end of this paper now, so wherever the end of this paper is, I'm going to make sure I can add 41 to it, and then still have 1 inch of seam allowance. So that's going to be 42. So I'm going to, you see what I did here? The more you angle your fabric, the more flare you will have at the end. So if I keep on moving this angle this way, that means the more opening, like flare, I will have at the bottom part, right? Because you see it narrows at the top and flares at the bottom. So now I'm going to go ahead and place my paper. And then guys, once you fold this paper now, once you fold this dart away, the edge here cannot be the same anymore. So the only part that will be the same with the paper, that will be straight, is the upper part. From this part now is already forming the angle, so it doesn't matter. I'm just going to make sure that at least the upper part of this paper aligns with the straight line here. You understand? So I'm going to make sure that at least the 1 inch of the upper part is straight aligned with this part here. That doesn't mean that you have a lot of space here. It's just a little space, maybe half an inch of space here. That doesn't mean, so if you're doing it and you have this much space, it doesn't work. You have to bring it closer and make sure that you align the upper part. So even if you get at least half an inch of space from the end of the paper to the cloth, it won't matter. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and fold it. So guys, now the next thing I have to do is, after that, I'm going to just put my tape here and make sure I add all my measurements and the seam allowance. So 42 is what I need, so I make sure to have 42 all the way. That's including 1 inch of seam allowance. After that, now the next thing I'm going to do is, from this point now, you're going to come down at least 10 inches from here. I made sure I came down 10 inches from this point, and then I marked it all the way across. The 10 inches I'm using is just basically from my waist to my hip. Where would that be? So that would be 10 inches down from my waist. After that, you're going to go ahead and put in your hip measurement. Make sure your hip measurement can fit in there with at least 1 inch or so. And then after that, I'm going to go in and blend it into this line outside of this paper. So you're going to go ahead and blend it. So guys, you see what I did? I blended it in from the edge of my paper down to this point, you see? So you will have a little bit of space here, maybe almost an inch or so, but just in such a way that you will be able to still blend in this side. But you see, the upper part of it is still aligned. So the angle here, it doesn't matter, because once you wear it, you're still taking this seam allowance out. So you see, I blended it into the hip line. So now the whole line is going to blend in all the way down. You see, it's going to blend in all the way down like this. So guys, after that, another thing I like to do is, I'm going to go up on this side now. I'm going to take it up by at least 1 inch. This will help it not to drape, like fall over, like, because sometimes when you do something that looks like a line, if you don't trim off a little by the edge, this part will now come down and be longer. So to avoid that, you always have to take it up a little bit, because this is the side, and if you don't take away that 1 inch, it is going to drop longer than the rest of the lower part of your dress. So now with that said, I'm going to now take it from here and then blend it into the line. Because originally what I had here is just my 42 inches. That's 41 is the length I needed, plus my 1 inch of folding the edge. So now that means this side will be 41 or so. You understand? Because this line here is the 42, but I took it up by 1 inch. So that means I've taken away 1 inch from it. So that means at the side I might have about 41, but by the center I have about 42. So now let me just go ahead and cut. I'm going to cut from here all the way to the side and then up. And then another thing you have to do is at this upper part, you don't forget to add your 1/2 inch, because you need that 1/2 inch of seam allowance to join it to the bodice. So I'm going to just mark that. So I'm going to just cut this out now. So guys, this is it here. So you see, for the back panel, all I did is to fold my fabric again into 2, but this time I made sure to have about 1 inch by the center back. So for the center back, I made sure to have 1 inch. This will be the one that will serve for our zipper, you understand? So now the next thing I have to do is to go ahead and cut. So I'm going to, and then you're going to make sure that this line here at the top part here, you have 1/2 inch, right? You're going to have 1/2 inch at the top of the back. So instead of where the pepper started, I made sure to mark. You will see that it went up, the one at the back went up at least 1/2 inch from where this pepper started. The pepper is here, it started here, the pepper stops here. But then if you look, you see that the one at the back, my back panel starts somewhere here. So this I'm going to use to fold it with lining or with bias. So now every other thing will be cut the same. I'm going to be cutting the side out. So guys, this is it here. You see what I was saying? This is how you're going to trace it. So the only part that has seam allowance is 1/2 inch at the bottom here. Every other thing is exactly like the pepper. The neckline, the shoulder here already has the seam allowance on the pepper. So the neckline, the same thing, no seam allowance. All my seam allowance is just here, and then I have 1.5 in between here, which I'm going to get at. And then this is the back panel. So you see, I have 2 of each of them. So now all I have to do is just to take this here. I'm going to join it shoulder to shoulder. So I'm going to, guys, what I have to do now is just to join the shoulder to the shoulder. So the shoulder of the back and the shoulder of the front, join it together this way. So I'm going to take this to sew it down like this, join the shoulder, take this one here, also join the shoulder together. And then I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to be using bias for mine. So I'm going to take a strip of bias and run it from this side here, come down to here, and then from this side of the neckline and come down to here. You see, remember, this is still our front panel. So now, so guys, for the sleeve, it's just an exaggerated puff sleeve. So guys, what I'm going to do is just, I don't have enough fabric to make it too puffy, so I'm just going to do just a basic puff sleeve. So I'm going to come down here by 4 inches. The width I have here is like my armhole divided by 2 plus extra 2 inches or so. And then I'm going to mark from this point to this point, find halfway through that, which is going to be here, connect it this way, just join. Guys, I'm basically just doing my normal sleeve but a little bit bigger in size, and I'm not going to be shaping it in like how you normally shape it. I'm just going to leave it the width and then add elastic to it because I don't have enough fabric. But normally you would have done like an exaggerated puffy sleeve by making it your armhole divided by 2, add maybe extra 3 to 4 inches to it, even to the length, so that you can use it to pass the casing for the elastic at the top, and then you're drawing something like this. I'm just going to link a video on how to cut a puffy, exaggerated puffy sleeve on my channel, so because I already have that. So I'm going to split this into 2 now, and then I'm going to take my sleeve and join it to the body of the cloth, pass elastic through it, and then we'll come back and figure out how we are going to join the bottom to the dress. So guys, this is it here. Like I told you guys, I was going to join the shoulder, finish up the neckline with bias, and then run the neckline all the way with 1 bias to this point, run the other one with 1 bias to this point. So the next thing I did was just to get it and then join it to the bottom part and then use lining on top. So you see, my lining is just placed, I just cut lining that is halfway through, like about 5 inches down from the point of the bottom part. So the lining I trace is actually like 5 inches down this angle, like 5 inches down this way, so that I can use it to turn over this part here. And then after that, I just joined this part here with, and then I sandwiched it in between my lining and this. So once I put this lining down, you'll see what it looks like. So you're going to give it a little pleat here to push in that 1.5 that you have, that you added in between. So that's basically what I have here. So you see, this is it here. So all I have to do now is just to go ahead and iron it. But in the meantime, the back panel, I joined the 2 sides of the back together, used bias to run the top part of it, and then insert a zip. So the back is still separate from the front. So with that done, the next thing I'm going to do now is just the way it is now. You see, everything is still separate. So you see my shoulder from the top, the shoulder, or for the back panel, sorry. You see, I've also used bias to run this part here. So what I have to do now is just to take my sleeve. So I'm going to take my sleeve and then I'm going to join it. So you see, I've already made a casing for elastic at the bottom. I folded it. So I'm going to join one sleeve on this side, and then I'm going to join the second sleeve on this side like this, and then I'm going to finish it up and close it. So as I'm coming down to the end, I'm going to stop 1 inch before I get to the end. I already made a belt. I'm going to insert it in between here, but I'm not going to close my seam all the way to the end because I'm still going to put this skirt part in between it too. So that's why I'm going to stop almost 1 inch before I get to the end of this back panel. I'm putting the belt, and then the same thing will go on the other side also. 1 inch before I get to the end, I'm also going to put in the second belt here. So basically, once you put in your sleeve, you're closing it down like your normal body. Start here, close it down with the belt in between, stopping 1 inch before you get to the end of this flap of the back panel. That's how you know where this belt will fall in. So I'm going to do that much, and then I'll come back and tell you guys how we're going to finish up the skirt with how we're going to join the skirt part to this here. I know you guys might be thinking there's a dart in front because you're seeing the reflection of something that looks like a J. I know you might be thinking there's a dart there because if you look closely at that, you see that there's something that looks like this that came down on the clothes, and then it's also the same on the other side. It looks something like this that came down. Look closely, you know that that is not a dart. It's actually the pocket. So it's just because the fabric is light and is white, so that's why it's showing up as if it's a dart, but that's actually the pocket they use. So this is a different method of putting the pocket. If you want, you can cut something, a lining that looks exactly like this, join it from underneath, join it with the seam also that joins to this part underneath it, and then you can do two of it, like have two of that. So you cut a lining that have this shape, just that will have this shape from here to this point all the way to the end, and then cut it two for each side, and then join it inside of this part with that seam that is holding this together. Sew it down there. That way you have this type of pocket. All you have to do is when you're closing the back, when you're joining the back of this to the front panel, you have to just come down maybe about 2 inches down from here, leave 6 inches open and close up the rest. That way you have your pocket in there. But I don't want to do that, you understand? So I'm going to be using ordinary lining. So all I have to do is just the same, come down 2 inches, and then I'm going to insert this lining as my pocket. So this is actually their pocket, but it's just that it's cut in a different shape this way. So mine is going to go in and look this way, except it's not coming up to the waist, up to this under bust. It's starting somewhere down here. So guys, I finished mine. So you see my seam, the only seam I have in front is just this one underneath the bust. Everything went down this way. And let me explain to you guys the back. So basically how I finished the back is what I was explaining to you guys. Once you put this belt in between the front and the back panel, you just sew up the remaining 1 inch and complete the seam, right? Remember I told you this belt will come in 1 inch before you get to the end. So once you put that remaining 1 inch, you close it up, and then you're going to take the back panel and then attach it. So you're going to take it the way it is. So let's say you've put the belt in between this back and front panel. The next thing I did was just to place my skirt on top of it and close it up. You understand? So you see my skirt is placed on top of it and then close it up all the way down. So this is the back of my skirt. You see there's a zip here, and when you finish, you will notice that the waist at the back is big. Is going to be a little bit big. So what you're going to do is you're going to go in and add a dart. So you see I added a dart here, about 1 inch dart, half an inch on both sides. So you see the waist here, there's a dart on this side, there's a dart on this side, and that's what will help the skirt to fit you better at the back. So that's basically it. I hope you guys understood what I was saying. So guys, you know the back doesn't have to be open. If you're not comfortable with this, you can still have your belt. All you have to do is, you know how we drafted our back panel, just add your seam allowance and join this side of the back to this side, and then you just put one straight zip going from the zipper allowance all the way to the top. So you don't have to really have this open. Is because people were asking me on the about the video itself, how to make this particular style. But if you're not comfortable with this whole thing at the back, you just want the front and then the back to be covered up all the way through, just go ahead, cut your back panel the way we did it, add your dart on this side, add your dart on this side, and then insert your skirt the zip. It's just going to be a basic back pattern, you understand. You just still cut the skirt the same way you cut it for this one, because you need that 1/2 inch at this part here, at the part of the back, to join to the 1/2 inch from the top, so that you can make a complete back panel. So, and then you're going to go ahead and just insert a side pocket to it if you want to add pocket, and that's it. So this is what the bottom part looks like here, and then this is the top part, and then this is what I did here. I added this plastic pressing button, one at the top, one at the bottom, and that's basically it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope I explained this well for you to understand, and please like, share and subscribe. Bye.